Have you already gone through all your favourite local co-op games multiple times now? If so, and you're still craving that couch co-op goodness, let's trudge through some of my backlog games and jump into 3 that you may not have heard of, and we'll see if they're worth it or not. Ever wanted to see what a Luigi's Mansion roguelike would look like if it was designed by the Ren and Stimpy creators? Well, now you can with Dead End Job, a twin-stick shooter where it's your job to hunt down ghosts and vacuum them up. The game has a really striking art style and an opening video which really did make it feel like a 90s cartoon.
Had a partner named Barrelware until the sandwich got stuck down there. A legend of ghost prevention, getting sent down to the ghost dimension.
The gameplay itself was simple in that you would go room to room fighting ghosts and then sucking them up while saving civilians. The mechanics themselves were fairly simple with its shooting and sucking, but it could also be fairly challenging with the limited lives and slightly awkward enemy spawning. As a single player experience, I think it was a fairly solid game. The co-op element, however, was a very different story. Straight away there was no sign of how to actually begin co-op, so we started up a run and saw there was no mention of it on screen, even checking the options for any clues. I always dislike when games either don't clearly show you how to start co-op, or you have to finish a starting level first before it's unlocked. Here, we even just quit the game to double check that it did indeed have local co-op, and while it had the tags in the description saying it did, it also didn't have the local co-op game as a Steam feature. So after seeing it definitely saying it has local co-op, we booted back into the game and tried again, and after loading into a level we tried pressing every button on the controller and eventually we got a second player. I really would recommend that games have an icon or something on screen to say that a player can join, as it really wasn't that obvious. However, once we started playing the game in co-op, we realised the tagline in the game's description really did sum it up. Drop in, drop out couch co-op, as your mentor appears to lend you a hand. Appears to lend a hand is what it felt like, as player 2 is almost useless in the game. Their projectiles apparently slow the enemies down or something, but honestly, you could barely see it doing that. They couldn't damage the ghosts, they couldn't pick up loot, all they could do was feel like the little brother with an unplugged second controller. The game itself was pretty good for a single player experience, but for a co-op game, I certainly can't recommend it. It felt like an add-on that just wasn't wanted or planned for, and there are so many other games out there where it is handled better that we'll see. Next up, another twin-stick shooter, one that has a sprinkle of many genres in it, from roguelike and Metroidvania to monster taming and bullet hell. Here, we have Patch Quest. Starting the game in co-op was simple and clear, which was nice to see after the previous entry. We were able to boot up and go through the game together very seamlessly. The monster taming aspect was a nice little difference in the game for us. You could tame creatures you come across by tying them up until they're your new friend, then allowing you to ride them throughout the levels. Each had slightly different abilities and skills that could help out with some of the different terrains, and it was fun finding new creatures as we progressed.
Yeah.
Just do be sure to keep things civil when you both want to try and tame the same monster. Oh, I like him. Beaver boy.
No, I'm.
No, I want the
beaver boy.
I want the beaver.
I want the beaver.
Well, I'm gonna get the beaver. As an enjoyer of bullet hell games myself, it was a nice addition to add some challenge to the game, and it was pretty fun sitting next to each other or screaming to dodge the random projectiles flying at you. Even though it may feel like the game had a lot of different things going for it, they felt like they melded together really nicely, and we found ourselves really enjoying this cute little game. The amount of projectiles usually indicated how chaotic and difficult it could end up feeling, but we didn't really feel frustrated with it, and each run early on felt rewarding as we explored and found new monsters to tame. I would say that after a while the runs stopped being as different from each other as some other roguelikes, and it could be not as interesting in later stages. I think after playing the game for a few hours both solo and co-op, Patch Quest ended up being another game that we were glad to have found. The gameplay loop was good fun, and we really enjoyed how it felt both chill and relaxing with exploring and monster taming, while also being frantic and chaotic with the chaos dodging boss fights. I'd put it close to being a combination of Cult of the Lamb and Pokemon Mystery Dungeon feel to it, which is all you really want sometimes.
Nice. Boop beep.
If you've been wanting some side-scrolling co-op beat-em-up action and you've already played Castle Crashers, maybe give Paw 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 a go, where you play as anamorphic animals fighting back against a tyrannical king wanting them to wear pants. Truly horrific stuff. Join the anti-pants in a hack-and-slash adventure with your friends. The co-op was nice and easy to start and we were quickly ready to take up arms. The game had your standard collection of classes for any RPG, and we did find it had a fairly sizable skill tree for each class, which was nice to see to make the characters feel more your own. I'd say the gameplay was pretty basic with it being a hack and slash. You had a quick attack and a heavy attack, and some may or may not enjoy this as we found out while playing that we were on two different minds on this.
I feel like as well the combat, like, I don't have to think that much about it, which I kind of like.
Yeah, that's my problem with it, I think, is the combat is quite dull.
No, I'm enjoying it. Because it's not complicated.
It's not complicated, which I don't mind, but it's too spammy. Like, if I can just stun lock the whole, like that, it just stun locks every single thing. It doesn't have as much enjoyment for me.
Oh.
As you saw from before, I did find that the attacks can stun lock enemies fairly easily. My character had a big axe heavy attack which could just keep mobs stuck to the floor as we were pummeling them. And while it was kind of fun to do for a bit, it did feel like it made the mob encounters kind of trivial at times. Later on we found out it seemed like basically anything in the game could stun lock easily, even a wagon. On the payload mission I got trapped with the enemies in front of the wagon as my partner went to town smacking that thing forward. What it does also mean is that the enemies can stun lock you all the same. As we found out with one of the bosses. I could see this getting a little frustrating with how often it happened, as the enemy AI itself felt a little basic and even janky at times. On a secret boss, it kinda just stood there a lot and let me pick up my partner multiple times, which may have been to make up for all the stun locks it had given me before. There were a lot of weapons and items that you could find throughout the game, and a fun little addition that I liked was that you could buy mounts to use in battle. They were unfortunately only a one-use item, but they did make for some extra fun and were useful as an extra life on harder sections. I think even after all my nitpicking, it was a fun co-op game to be able to pick up and play with your friends. And the easier combat may help you bring in people that may not be as into games, which is always a good thing to have.
Oh, the fire hurt.
Really? Interesting. There we have 3 local co-op games you may not have heard of. And as we've seen, not all games listed as co-op are worth it. But there are some gems still out there to find. So if you yourself have a collection of games you've never heard of or think may not be for you, why not just try booting them up for an hour and see what you think? You never know what treasures you may find.